Hi, I'm Heather Nani, and tonight we're talking about Angela Carter's The Lady of the House of Love. Now this will just be a short video because I was reading The Lady of the House of Love and I realized it is Devil's Night 2020, the night before Halloween, and it seems like you can't be reading a story like that and not talk about it and post a video. So just briefly, Angela Carter was a British novelist, poet, journalist. She was born in 1940. She passed away sadly in February of 1992. She has an interesting story about her life, and I'm not going to get into it right now because then that will make this video too long. I am posting articles where you can read all about Angela Carter. However, what I do want to focus on is Angela Carter did not like to be labeled. She was not comfortable with that. And she didn't want the work that she did labeled as any one particular genre. Now, she was considered a feminist, but she said, femininity is just a social fiction. And I have a few quotes here that I should read, otherwise I'll butcher them. So, she said, she believed that ourselves are neither false nor true, but the roles we either master or are mastered by. So she never wanted to be placed or labeled something, so she had to play a particular role in any way. She also said that integration means giving up one's freedom of being in that one becomes mastered by one's role. Here it is again. So even when you're reading her fiction, you have to be careful of how you're interpreting it. Now, you could really go strong with The Lady of the House of Love and say this is about someone objectifying women and the roles that women play, and it's definitely that, but there's other stuff going on here. It's interesting and it's very creepy. So Lady of the House of Love was published, I believe, in 1976 in the Iowa Review. It was later included in The Bloody Chamber, her book from 1979. Now, I'm sorry, I just stepped on something. Carter did not like we said, didn't want to be considered a writer of any one particular genre, but there's definitely, she played with fairy tales a lot. She played with horror. There's elements of magical realism in her work, and there is definitely horror and fairy tale in The Lady of the House of Love. It really is kind of a little bit of a version of, or she's playing on the tale of Sleeping Beauty a bit. Now, if you don't know much about Carter, when you start to read the story, you might say, are you kidding? It's as if she has taken every trope of Gothic fiction and every element that a Gothic novel needs, and she's put it in a bag and she shook it up and shakes it out. And then you have to do something with it. Now, when I say she has, and we'll talk about that, because she's a bit subversive with what she does in her writing, and she inverts some of the roles, the classic roles that we're used to, but let's just talk about the kind of Gothic elements that she includes in here. We have, of course, it's a vampire story. So we have a vampire, it's a female vampiress. We have a village where everyone's either been chased out or killed. We have a castle that is decaying. It's full of rot and mold. There's leaks, there's water coming down from the ceiling. We have walls that are covered in red velvet, of course, and some walls covered with black satin. We have, our vampiress is always sitting at her little round table with her tarot cards. She sleeps in a coffin bed, of course. And what else do we have? Oh, we even have the paintings of the family members. Our countess is a descendant of Vlad the Impaler, so she has a long line of vampires in her family, and their portraits have been painted and they're on the walls of this decaying castle. Oh, we also have bats and owls and anything you can imagine. The Countess, the vampiress, she wears a wedding dress, you know, of course, her mother's wedding dress, and yeah, so we have that. But then, well, let's talk just briefly about the story. Usually I say briefly, and it's not. This time it's going to be brief. We have a female vampire that doesn't want to be a vampire. She's not comfortable with what she's doing. She doesn't want to kill the bunnies in her garden. She doesn't want to kill the shepherd boys that come into the village that her keeper, an old mute lady who does the things that a vampire keeper does, which is make sure that the Countess's blinds are always drawn, that there's not too much light, that, you know, the Countess has enough to eat, so this old lady, when boys wander into this village, shepherds, she tells them to come along to the castle where she'll feed them, and then they get fed to the Countess. So we have her that's not comfortable with any of this, and she plays the tarot cards. That's where the title comes from, the Lady of the House of Love, and all the cards always come up death, 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 and she really just wants love, and she really would rather be human. Then we have the soldier who is on, well, the story takes place on the eve of World War I, when Britain enters World War I. We have this soldier on furlough, young man, described as really a bit of an Adonis. You know, he's blonde and blue-eyed and so gorgeous, as is our vampiress. She is spectacularly beautiful. So we have that. But anyway, so we have this young soldier boy that wanders into the village, and he's lured into the home of the Countess vampiress, and she doesn't want to kill him. She really just wants love. And for once, she pulled the love card in her tarot deck. And so she doesn't kill him, and she ends up dying, and he ends up going off to the war. And that's how the story ends. But now let's talk about what Carter was doing with the story. First of all, we have a female predator, which is traditionally, the male role. We have our young and handsome soldier who is the virgin. Yes, it's mentioned often. Carter mentions that this is that he is a virgin, and that is part of his strength. That's what helps him survive this ordeal. We have, well, our soldier is also, like I said, that Carter didn't hold back on, you know, any of the Gothic tropes. So we have our soldier who might as well have come from the age of the Enlightenment, because he rides a bicycle into the village, and he just is thinking in his head, you know, how practical the bicycle is, and what a good little machine it was. And, you know, he's always the man of reason. He is a man of reason, lured into this Gothic castle with this monstrous woman. But, so Carter plays with those roles a bit. However, our predator, our vampire, is also, at the same time, a bit of a damsel in distress, because she doesn't want this life. She just wants to be normal, really. And she's deeply conflicted. Now, what's interesting is the power, the role of who has the power in this story. Our vampiress is described as extremely delicate. Of course, she's very pale. She's a vampire. And when the young soldier sees her, he thinks she's consumptive and oh so sick and fragile, and he needs to care for her. So the whole time when he meets her, he's thinking about how he's going to care for this poor girl. But the reality is, the power is with her. She could kill him at any moment. Any moment, he's done. She chooses not to. In the meantime, when he's with her, he has very little power, doesn't he? But in his mind, and this is a moment that I personally found funny. I don't know if anyone else took it that way. But he's looking at her and he's going through this internal dialogue that, you know, I've got to rescue this poor girl. And I have to get to her to a clinic in Zurich because she's neurotic and she has psychological issues. Because of course, the female always needs to be brought to a team of psychiatrists to work on her, usually in Austria. But, you know, in this instance, he's taking her to Switzerland. But that's how damaged she is. He's going to take her to a team. You know, not one good solid therapist is going to do the trick with her. She is deeply disturbed. He also is going to take her to the ophthalmologist because she has to wear the sunglasses because of her photophobia. You know, she can't be in the light. But also he's going to take her to get to a manicurist because of, you know, those claw nails. He's going to get those filed. And then he's taking her to a dentist to get those fangs filed down as well. So Carter does write him as a bit of an idiot, although very handsome and very sweet. So she's playing with those different roles. She doesn't have some silly girl in this story. She has a girl that has all the power. She just doesn't want it. So, at the end of the story, playing on the Sleeping Beauty theme, her glasses fall off, as you know. She picks them up, glass gets stuck in her finger, and he kisses it and sucks it, probably. But he says something like, oh, do you want me to kiss it and make it better? Like he's her daddy or something. Again, he is wanting to be the strong male character. But at the end of the story, he wakes up the next morning. He is a virgin and he's very moral and upright, and he doesn't sleep with her. Not that she was going to sleep with him, she was going to kill him, but she didn't want to, so she goes off. He falls asleep in her room, and in the morning he finds her dead. And, you know, he didn't kiss her as the Sleeping Beauty prince and bring her back to life. No, he kissed her and he killed her. But the interesting thing is, that's what she wanted. I mean, she would have preferred to wake up and be in love, but at least at the end of the day, she was human. But here's another interesting thing that Carter does with this story. You see roses. The Countess's mother had planted roses in the courtyard, and roses have grown up and incarcerated, as it explained, the castle. And when the young soldier arrives at the castle, he's actually sick and he's nauseated by these roses. They're very sensual, and it's just too much for him. By the way, I have to note that it's a sensual story, and Carter had no problem with that at all. As a matter of fact, she did write some erotica back in her day, and for like softcore male magazines, but you can see that in her writing. Like she goes there, and we know what the roses mean. And so anyway, the next morning, when we find the dead Countess, what she does leave for her soldier is a rose, one of those gorgeous, voluptuous, thorny roses that says she pulled from her thighs and left it there for him. Now he takes this rose and he gets called back to his regiment because, yeah, they're going to war. And he gets back and he realizes he has this rose in his pocket, and he takes it out and it's starting to wilt. So he puts it in water and the rose comes back to life again, this beautiful, lush rose. And if we think that the rose seem to kind of represent all those baser appetites of our countess who survived on sucking the life out of men. This rose comes back to life, but we're left with this character that is going off to war in the trenches of France. And it seems like, as powerless as the Countess was in terms of what she was a monster, she was a vampire, she wanted. At the end of the day, our hero boy is also rather powerless, isn't he? Because he didn't understand that he had no power over the Countess. And he wasn't destroyed by that monster, but he will be destroyed by the monster of war when he enters those trenches. So, the Lady of the House of Love. It's great. It's horrifying and grotesque and upsetting and fascinating, and yeah, so go read it again. And